Tired of transcription headaches? Trent's automated transcription software can convert video, audio, and speech to text in more than 40 languages with up to 99% accuracy. Tell your stories faster by transcribing, translating, editing, and collaborating in a single workflow. We use Trent for this podcast, and it really does make a difference. Honestly, if you don't want your transcripts to be used for training algorithms, Trent really is the place to be. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Operations Room, a podcast for COOs. I am Brandon Mensinga, joined by my amazing co-host, Bethany Ayers. How are things going, Bethany?
I don't know. So one thing is, I don't think Instagram is good for me. I suspect Instagram isn't good for anybody, but yet, despite that, I still am on it, and I'm still on it probably too much, and it really feeds my health anxiety. Health news and all the ways that we are killing ourselves, and all of the rules that I'm not following, and all of the reasons why when I die, it's going to be my fault. And even though I'm aware of it, and I have blocked as many health news things as I can, anytime it comes up, I can't help but watch. And then the algorithm's like, oh, what she cares about is health news. And then it just comes back in. So the most recent one was actually not specifically a health news influencer account. It was a data account, and it was about how women are, I don't know if it's dying of cancer or just getting cancer at a tremendously higher rate than men. And then you had comments from random people trying to decide why it is that women are getting cancer at much higher rates than men. And those comments have seeped into my brain, and now I'm freaking out. So it was that women wear a lot more cosmetics than men, and they're not properly tested, and a lot of them are made with petroleum products. And so we're just like smothering oil all over our bodies, and that causes issues. Men tend to wear more cotton than women, and women wear more special fabrics, and all of the special fabrics are made out of plastic. And as they degrade, you get microplastics in your body. Sports bras directly linked to breast cancer. I mean, all of this is not real. And these are people in the comment section postulating as to why women have higher rates of cancer. But my ability to cheat death and do all of the right things, follow all of the rules, and never die, that's a lot of pressure on somebody's shoulders.
At some point, you will die, Bethany, I suspect.
No. If I follow all of the rules, I'll be fine forever. So sometimes Instagram's not bad. I was served a video earlier this week that was Jane Fonda talking about old age. And the opening of the video was the best because she said, I'm Jane Fonda. You may know me from being Jane Fonda for the last 86 years.
Exactly. Growing up, it's literally impossible somehow to not know who she is.
In the video, it's like really well productionized video, and she's working with a scientist, and the scientist is talking about the facts, and then Jane Fonda's adding in her bits. And one of the things she said, like trying to banish senior moments as a thing. And it's just like what we're telling ourselves is that we're losing our memory. Like when we can't find our car keys when we're 17, we're not saying, oh, it's a senior moment. We just can't find our car keys. And to embrace aging and not be so afraid of it. And also said that we all focus on ending up in nursing homes and freaking out about nursing homes. But actually only 3% of the population will end up in them.
Is that true? 3%?
I mean, that's true according to Instagram and Jane Fonda. I have no idea if it's true. We could go in and verify that.
Well, Jane Fonda said it. It's got to be true.
Jane Fonda and the scientist said it. So, I choose to believe that that is true, that 3% of us are going to end up in nursing homes and the rest of us are going to have some combination of home care or just dying, doing okay. So anyhow, that's the inner workings of my brain. So how am I doing, Brandon? I don't know.
All right, so we have got an amazing topic for today, which is making AI happen in 2025 for your organization. We have an amazing guest for this, which is Charlie Cowan. He is an AI strategist and has single-handedly developed a product called Koala using AI tools behind him in terms of development tools to make the app happen, being a non-techie, which is phenomenal and quite an amazing story. So before we get to Charlie, the first question I wanted to ask you, a bit of a broad question, which is, What is the opportunity right now for scale-ups to go hard on being AI first, as it were?
I made a face when you asked that question because I was wondering if you meant AI first in the product or AI first within the company. I mean, I think there's the bigger existential question is your product shit and do you need to tear it up and just start it again as an AI product? And if you're more on the startup than scale up side, I would highly encourage you to do that. I'm just pushing that one out there as like a little moment of compelling thinking or controversial thoughts. Although it's interesting because everything is so new, there's a lot of scope for improved products. Like for me, the really big gap is a next generation Zapier, like something that is really easy for non-technical users to use to automate the soul destroying work in their lives. And there are loads and loads of companies trying to figure out agentic, but they're still like technical for technical people rather than no code, easy automation for non-techies. So I'm very excited about that space. And once that unlocks, then everything in your business should be AI first.
It's a bit of a question of AI agents, which are going to be verticalized right now for very specific functions, as opposed to AI agents working together in tandem to actually have more of a net effect for an organization. And I think that's definitely out there in the future. I think what we're going to get first is more siloed AI agents for realm A versus realm B.
Yeah, but like a lot of those agents are just siloed vertical agents are not interesting for me. My nirvana, and I think at some point this year, will be I have all of these CVs to sort through. I don't want to sort through them. I tell the agent, these are the topics that I'm looking for on the CVs. This is what good looks like. Go and read all of these and bring out the ones that I'm looking for rather than a rules-based. And then you're like, no, you didn't quite get the CVs right. Really, I want to have blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And, like actually doing the boring work for you, but you're prompting them in English.
But I would consider that to be a verticalized AI agent for the people recruitment function as an example. I think that's definitely in sight right now. I think what I was thinking more in my head is more around broader activities where, it's not just simply a recruitment CV thing that they're doing, but in fact, it's maybe the entire people function. Multiple agents need to work together and cross-pollinate to come up with better outcomes, I suppose.
I think you're right in terms of it exists now, but the problem is every single one of those things exists as a $10 subscription. And I want to pay one $30 subscription and do it all. Where, there's like one tool that the HR people can use to do their HR stuff and accounts payable can use to do accounts payable and sales can use to automate their stuff. And you have like a new automation layer that the entire business can use.
I think from an operational standpoint for a company, it seems like the lowest hanging fruit that is out there is simply your processes and policies. Anything that's been documented in that form, which is either internally creating a subset of GPTs that parse off different pieces of policy sections or process sections or functions or whatever. Or what I've also seen is using ChatGPT or Claude or what have you. But what I've also seen is actual AI agents that are set up to ingest your policies or ingest your processes and do something more advanced than what you get with an internal chat GPT that you create yourself, basically. So one example of this was the internal knowledge base curator GPT. So that product, and it is a product, you basically take your documentation within your company, ingest it into this GPT. It's all set up to sort, categorize, and provide a more advanced experience for the end user in terms of being able to search for things and so on with a taxonomy that's created and so on. And that seems very interesting to me.
Yeah, I just don't want to have to pay £10 for every single one of them or £20 for every single one of them. I'm looking forward to the consolidation. And it's just at what level does that consolidation happen?
So I was reading Charlie's LinkedIn post, and he created one post around hiring for an AI first organization. And his little description that he put in there was to create a task for a candidate where they need to write a prompt or create a Claude ChatGPT project that could accelerate a key task in the role that they're being hired for and to demonstrate an example of how they would use it. And that seemed really interesting to me, or maybe think at the very least in the sense of like, okay, if we want to hire people that are on AI, using AI, have some level of competence and skill and interest in AI, it seems like at the very least asking an interview question in some form, maybe not a task, but some kind of questioning around this seems to make tremendous sense. I'm just curious what you think.
I agree. And I actually think being a task would be totally legitimate. It shows interest, it shows aptitude, and it shows curiosity. I think there's still a level of resistance to AI because it's seen as cheating. And so it's actually showing people who have a AI first mindset or AI forward mindset where using AI isn't cheating. It's the new normal and it's the smart thing to do. And so both you're testing for people who are coming into your organization who are AI forward, but you're also massively demonstrating expectations that in your world, using AI is smart, not cheating.
So when you think about rolling out AI within the organization right now in 2025 for a company, we have our standard tools, if you want to call it that, which is Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini. What makes sense here? Would you encourage companies right now to say to themselves, okay, look, let's create a policy around this. Let's license some of these tools for different functions within the company or within the entire organization and launch them into the company, upskill people in terms of how to write prompts or create projects, create some level of support structure around it where people are being supported to use it effectively, and some kind of reward mechanism to reward those that are actually integrating it back into their jobs. Is that something that we should do now?
All the technology is changing so rapidly that I would not commit to a single one. I would go, even if it's a bit more expensive, for rolling monthly contracts and continue to experiment. It's too early to sign up for an annual commitment to anything right now. I don't even know if you can, but if you can, I would not suggest annual commitments. It's not worth it. Things are moving fast. Policies, definitely, because it makes you think through all of the gotchas and it makes it really clear for the organization. Just to push Charlie's LinkedIn a little bit more, he happened to have a LinkedIn post this morning that was a 7-page AI policy template to use that looked pretty decent for lots of the main thoughts. So if you haven't put one in place yet, or you want to make sure that you're covering the key areas, I'd suggest having a look at it. And then the reward mechanism, or for us at Peak, we have a few different ways that we are focusing on the team using and getting more experimental and interested in Gen AI, because we have pockets that are super interested and pockets that aren't. So in our weekly, we have like a company all hands that's weekly. There is a 5-minute segment every single week where somebody does a show and tell on something they've done. The second thing that we've done is we have a Slack channel that's a Gen AI channel. We actually used to have 2 and have just merged it into one because it was getting a bit messy as to which is which. And so all news, all thoughts, all new technology, all uses goes into that channel. And it's a self-selecting channel, but I think most of the business is in it. And then the third thing that we are rolling out this year is for our technical teams, a Gen AI training course. We're running internally. We've not found anything externally that matches our needs. And that is an enablement course that'll be running for the first half of the year. And then we'll see what the second half brings us.
So when it comes to budgeting and providing different functions that have different aspirations and different needs around some of these generic tools, what are you doing from a budgeting standpoint? Are you creating like a budget for each of the functions, or how does that work?
So we're doing a bit of that for experimentation and like what are the right tools and what are the best tools. And then also for all of our systems of record or standard SaaS tools, as they come up for renewal, we are investigating the market and looking for AI first alternatives and seeing whether or not they're too early stage to move to. But our general assumption or hypothesis is all of the SaaS businesses that have a bit of AI stuck on the side are not going to be as good as AI first businesses. And so we're constantly searching in the market for what does the new system of record look like in this new world. And for my vision, I think we have one system of record with lots of different elements to it, because what's a system of record but a massive database? And so, and it's always been that the reason why the systems of record are different is because of the interface and the tooling required. But if the interface becomes a chat box for pretty much everybody, we need different systems of record long term? Short term, we do, because I don't think anybody's reached that long term goal. But like, that's part of why we're not committing to long term contracts right now while we watch the space. And so for our existing systems of record, when they're coming up for renewal, we're not doing 3-year renewals for anything. We're doing 1-year renewals so that we have this choice. Even like if nothing's fit for purpose yet, our guess is something will be fit for purpose in a year.
So when it comes to the AI policy that you now have, and you also mentioned Charlie on his LinkedIn profile putting together a template AI policy. He talked about a couple interesting things. One was in the policy itself to provide a list of encouraged uses for each function that are endorsed by the leaders. And I think this is quite important and useful in the sense that the policy itself is not simply there to tell people what to not do, but in fact to do the opposite in this case, because what we want with AI is to truly embed in people's thoughts that we want the company to win. And the way the company is going to win in the future is using AI tools, and we need you to try them. We need you to experiment. And by providing a list of encouraged use cases, and it's not to say that it's going to be exhaustive, but you need to put something out there where people are like, oh, okay, within my function of sales, here's like the 10 things that the sales leader right now has tacitly endorsed, basically. So maybe I should start doing something about it, I guess. What do you think of that first one?
So we have that, but not in our policy. We have it in our strategy document. And so what we've done is for each department, we have like low hanging fruit. What are like the immediate things that we can be doing? What are areas where we want to do more or investigate and experiment with? And what is our long-term vision? So what is our ideal in each of those areas? What we've also done that I forgot to mention is we have an AI evangelist in every team. So that's the person who self-selected, could be very different in each team, but it's the person who just like naturally is reading everything, naturally experimenting. They tend to be the person who's in the all hands showing information, but they're like the go-to person of, I've just realized that SDRs can do whatever, or,
The second one that he suggested should be in the policy is deciding on a list of company-approved AI tools, in particular, a streamlined process to get tools and versions approved, i.e., somebody sees something, they make a request, they get an approval within X days as an SLA, and the default is to say yes, pretty much. What do you make of that?
So we already have that in place, but not specifically for Gen AI tools, just in general for buying for our security reasons. So it has to go through a security audit, which means that it's not within a couple hours. It just depends on how much information we can get about these companies and how they're treating our data and whether or not they have ISO 27001, whether or not they're GDPR compliant, et cetera. And sometimes that can take weeks, but I think it's worth it because there's so many new tiny companies that the ChatGPTs or the open AIs and Gemini, like you can find out all of their security really quickly and make decisions and understand whether or not your data is training the models, et cetera. Tiny company with 15 people, we end up contacting them, getting their certifications, understanding what their policies are if they don't have certifications yet, and talking through whether or not we feel comfortable working with them. Quite often they're too small and not mature enough and don't have it yet, or maybe haven't even been around enough for an audit. But we will have conversations with them and ask them how they're thinking about things. And if they seem to understand what they're talking about and be quite forward thinking and have policies in place and a roadmap of where they're going to get to, depending on the sensitivity of the data that might be going there, we'll still say yes. But if we talk to somebody and it's just like, okay, these people are very immature, they have no idea, we cannot trust them with any level of data, we'll say no.
The other thing that occurs to me for companies right now, irrespective of any policy or actually rolling out AI at all, is just this obvious thing where right now today, if you don't have an AI policy, you've got a problem a little bit because people in your company are using personal accounts to use ChatGPT to write their emails or whatever that is happening. So having a very simple statement to the company, irrespective of anything else, just saying, look, if you're using a personal account, please, please, please go into your settings and toggle the data learning off, essentially, because if you don't, anything that you do will be sucked into the vortex of the large language models, and we cannot have that.
And also then write an AI policy.
The last bit I wanted to bring up was best practices, and he had a couple of nuggets here that I thought were useful. One was when it comes to Claude projects and ChatGPT projects. And projects are essentially a framework to allow you to have a consistent set of context for whatever it is that you're asking of the GPT in this case to respond to around the company or around your products or around your policies or whatever, whereby you don't have to enter a prompt every single time to put in that context. And his best practice was to ensure that those projects and those statements around the company were there to allow any user within the company to take that project, take that context, and apply it to their account very specifically to ensure that all the context was all pre-set up. What do you think of that one?
That is beyond what I've experienced so far. So I just feel like if Charlie says it's a good idea, it's a good idea.
So why don't we park it here and get into our conversation with Mr. Charlie Cowan. We are revving up the engine of the podcast and looking for a great brand to sponsor the show. We have over 7,000 listeners now across COOs, CEOs, founders, and operational professionals who are decision makers for all kinds of technology, including HR, planning, strategy, legal, and other tools.
It's Beth here. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the podcast, and we'd love to keep it going, but we're going to need to get some sponsors in order to do that. So if you work at a company that could benefit from speaking to listeners like you or know of a company that might benefit, please send them our way.
To find out more, go to operationsroom.co/sponsorship. That is operationsroom.co/sponsorship.
Why don't you talk a little bit about Koala? Not so much for a product that people should go and buy, but the journey of creating it.
So in August 2024, this is when I was in peak. Oh my goodness, I'm going to set up a AI boutique consultancy. And then suddenly, oh my goodness, like who am I to go and tell people how they should be implementing and integrating these technologies if I've not done it myself? That's just snake oil. This was August. I was on a ferry to a Greek island with my family, and the kids were sleeping, and my wife and I were reading, and I was reading a book called The Jolt Effect. And they did some research where they looked at why enterprise sales end up with the status quo. And the prevailing thought was that people stayed with the status quo because as a salesperson, you had not been able to sell the difference from what they've got today. So I came back from this holiday and I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to build an AI type solution for this, and it will solve my problem of I've never built anything with these tools, and then I'll be able to, to advise people. And even in September of 2024, I was WhatsApping friends, do you know anyone that is a developer that could know how to write this thing? Because I'm a non-technical founder. Does anyone know anyone that could help me either as an agency or whatever? But just over the course of the summer, some amazing new tools had been coming out, new versions of Claude, which is one of my favorite LLMs, which is like a ChatGPT. A new tool called Cursor came out, which is an AI development environment. A new tool called V0 came out, which is a UI development tool. And I just thought one weekend, do you know what? I'll just see how far I can get as a non-developer. And so I started off with Claude. So if you've used ChatGPT, then you know how to use Claude. One of my favorite features of Claude is that you can set up a project. And a project you can think of as a wrapper around a specific subject or topic. So I set up a Claude project called Koala, which is the name of the application that I built. And I gave it some custom instructions. You are my technical co-founder. In short, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. I've got an idea for an app, but I want you to be my technical co-founder and to help me to architect it, to help me structure the project, to help me to understand what tech stack I should use. And I'm going to come back to you with questions, and you should push back on me if what I'm asking for is a stupid idea. And our goal here is just to get to an MVP where we can get some paying customers. So there's more that goes into it than that, but that was basically the custom instruction. And then as I started chatting with Claude, I would build out Google Docs that might be the project overview. It might be the file structure. It might be the licensing model. It might be some of the go-to-market. And all of this becomes the context that is in this Claude project. And oh my goodness, I chat to this thing all day long at the weekends because this was a weekend project. Like from 8 a.m, I'm chatting to Claude, say, hey, Claude, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And one of the great things about having Claude as a technical co-founder is you can ask stupid questions. You can ask the question that you asked Claude yesterday and, he doesn't complain. And because you've given him the instructions, he'll push back and say, I wouldn't do it like that. Keep focused on the fact that you're building an MVP. So I wouldn't do that right now, whatever that might be. So Claude was sort of the first, build out the architecture, build out the project plan, build out the user stories and so on. Next step is going over to this tool called V0. It's an AI-powered generative UI tool. So here you set up a new project into which I upload the context, which has come from Claude. So Claude's given me this whole PRD, product requirements document. That goes straight into V0. And now I can start, can you design the home screen for me? I want these sections. Here is my brand colors. I want a dark theme. And without me having to write a very long prompt, because it's already got the entire PRD, out comes the sidebar, out comes the project upload document, out comes the chat screen. And I'm like, whoa, even better than that. What you can put into V0 is screenshots of other apps that you like and say, I want that, but in my project context. So why do I need to reinvent the wheel? Claude and ChatGPT have got the kind of chat interface fairly well nailed. If my product did that, I'd be happy. Screenshot, drop into V0, give me like that. And so as a non-developer or non-designer, I should say, at this point, you're now designing screens at a rapid rate. And not only does it do the design, but it then creates all of the code, whether that's TypeScript, JavaScript, in the back end.
So how much did you spend on IT to build Koala?
So when ChatGPT launched and they pulled a number out of thin air of $20 a month, and as Sam Altman has said, we basically pulled a number out of thin air. We're going to charge $20 a month. Well, that's what everyone else has had to follow. So Claude is $20 a month. I pay $20 a month for ChatGPT, and I use them both interchangeably throughout the day. Replit, I think, was $120 for a year's license to core. V0, $20 a month. Cursor, I think I pay maybe $30 or $40 a month. And then I'm paying for the others because I'm testing them out, like Lovable as well. But they're all in this order. A couple of things that are a little bit interesting, just when people are thinking about pricing models for these things. Two things that I've seen are quite interesting. V0 and Lovable, you can set up a free account, but when you have a free account, your designs are public. And so you pay to go private. And I remember when I was first designing some of the UI screens for Koala. I'm sure no one would have been interested in what I was doing, but for me, I felt compelled to make this thing private. I'd not seen that before. You could imagine that for Salesforce or HubSpot. You can use it free, but your contact records are public. Do you want to go private? Thought that was an interesting dimension.
And so you did all of this from September to when did it launch? December?
December, yeah. So it was 12 weeks from having never written a line of code to having a production app. I would say that, and this was all done during the weekends and a few evenings, there were 3 weekends when I literally broke down in tears in front of my wife. And I was like, who am I kidding? I don't know what I'm talking about. I should stick to doing what I'm good at. What was I thinking? Like, there's a reason why developers get paid a ton of money. It's because this is complicated and I don't know what I'm doing. And this is one of the problems with AI development tools is that, yes, it gives you this acceleration from naught to amateur. But when something goes wrong, you don't know what's gone wrong because you don't actually understand at the start what you're looking at. And I was trying to deal with quite complex user authentication through a third party. And I just couldn't understand why when certain people were logging in, they couldn't see certain things. And I'd literally break down in tears with my wife going, I don't know what I'm doing. And she'd say, go for a walk, or go for a run. That always helps you. Listen to a podcast. And so I'd put on a Lenny Rachitsky podcast and I would come back inspired and I go, I'll just try this one thing. And that one thing always solved it. And I was like, yes, I'm back in the game, and then would carry on. So I finished each weekend on a high, but Saturday afternoons were my low points. There's some really interesting conversations happening on X or LinkedIn where you've got real developers that actually know what it takes to build a production enterprise application and back-end infrastructure and scaling versus this whole new breed of indie hackers or non-technical founders that are now spinning up these POCs. And the people that have been doing this for a long time and actually know what they're doing, they're like, you think that's development? That's not development. You haven't got a clue. And the same thing happened, when Canva came out, and real designers who are using Photoshop or whatever are looking at people using Canva going, that's not real design. And I know this trend will continue, but the tools will improve. Like I say, I listened to this Lenny Rachitsky podcast and always out on my runs. And there was 2 episodes or 2 sort of sound bites that really stuck with me when I was going through this process. The first, and I'll have to remember his name, he was the founder of Writely, which became Google Docs. And he's telling Lenny about the process of writing original Google Docs. And he said, we didn't know what we were doing. But throughout my entire career, I've just got to the edge of what I know and fucked around. By getting to the edge of what you know and fucking around, you end up learning stuff. If you stay within what you're doing, then you don't learn. So that was one thing. On those days when I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, I had his phrase in my mind, like, no, but this is where learning is happening. And the second episode that really stuck with me was a guy called Nikita Baer, who has built a number of B2C apps that have gone viral and be bought by Facebook, Meta, I think, 1 or 2 of them. He said this phrase that stuck with me is like, one of the things no one ever tells you is the moment you hit virality, you have to build the whole thing again because it isn't built for the scale that you need. And I took the positive in that. I was like, so what you're telling me is I don't need to build an enterprise solution. I just need to build something that gets to the first 5 or 10 users and solves their problem. And if I can get that far and then prove the value and the use case, then I can get proper people that actually know what they're doing and then build for the next stage. So that gave me this kind of license to like, I'm not purporting to be an enterprise developer that's going to build a SOC 2 compliant, scalable thing, but I don't need to build that yet. I just need to prove that I can solve a problem for someone and that they would come and log in. And if I can prove that, then solve the next stage later on.
So this is me pushing your LinkedIn content, but there's probably a piece of content a week that you write that I end up sharing internally. And this week's piece of content was around public versus private data and information with ChatGPT. So do you want to talk about that?
One of the things that I'm always having to remind myself as someone that would now consider myself to be in the AI bubble is that the majority of people are not in the AI bubble. They're just, going to work, doing the work the same way they have. Maybe they've asked a couple of questions, what is or how should I do that to ChatGPT, but they've not really embedded it in their work. And to that extent, a lot of the companies I speak to either have not got an AI policy or they've got quite a pessimistic and restrictive AI policy. You must not use ChatGPT on your company laptop. You must not upload company data to ChatGPT. And definitely, because I've come across almost no companies that have this, they have not got a team or enterprise account for ChatGPT or Claude. So if you're asking people, how are you using it? They say either I've got a free account or I pay for the pro account on my own personal card. Now, this is where the data privacy issues come in. So if you're on a free or a paid personal account for ChatGPT, by default, ChatGPT, OpenAI, can use what you upload in terms of your content. So that can either be what you write in the chat or any files that you upload that is defined as content. They can use that to train the model by default. You can go into the settings and there is a I love the way they phrased it. The setting does not say train our models. The setting is, would you like to help improve the model for everyone? It's a really nice, warm, I would like to help improve the model. It doesn't say what that actually means. Your data then goes into training the model. But anyway, you can turn that off, but that is, you have to opt out of that. And out of the people that I speak to, no one does that because they haven't thought about it. Most people are low-tech users of it. They just start using it and uploading things. On the Teams, this is ChatGPT specifically when I say Teams or Enterprise, but the same thing on Claude as well. If you are on one of those accounts, then by default, your content is not used to train the model unless you explicitly opt in as part of their feedback model. So where I find this is quite amusing in a way, that the companies that are most risk averse that say, you must not use AI, and we're certainly not going to pay for an account for you to have, actually push everything under the radar and under the carpet to people that are still doing the work, but they're using a personal account, which by default gets all of your company data up into these models. And so this is no time to be an ostrich with your head in the sand going, la, 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 nothing's happening. People are using this, and you can choose to ignore it, in which case you create a data risk, or you can choose to embrace it. And actually, the default is that your data is not going to be used to train the models.
So the question of that and this idea that, hey, I'm a COO and I'm coming into this organization, venture capital backed, it's 150 people, and I want to have a real AI push in this organization holistically across the company. So the question to you as a COO is, what is it that I should do? What should I think about if I really want to transform this organization?
Some of the most common first use cases when you talk to companies about using AI, it comes down to sort of productivity, efficiency. And there are two ways that you can approach that. So if you imagine you've got a 5,000 person company, and you can say, if we use AI, we could be way more efficient. And therefore, instead of having 5,000 people, we could have 2,000 people. And so that's quite a defensive, cost saving, increase our margins way of looking at it. The other is to say, we're 5,000 people, but actually, if we used AI, we can immediately act like a company of 50,000 people by giving everyone that we've already got just way more capability. Benioff was talking about they're not hiring any more software engineers this year. Of course, everyone has a sort of wry smile. Benioff's a great marketer. But his point is, we don't need to hire any more engineers because we can get the engineers we've got to be way more productive. And you're seeing that across so many companies. So the first thing that I'd be counseling any senior executive is to say, right, just imagine that you could supercharge the people that you've got and get them to be way more capable, to be able to work in different countries and different domains, to know way more than they do today. How would you approach that? And a lot of this comes back to not trying to do anything overly complex. So even a couple of years ago, when you talk about AI, people, we're going to use AI to completely disrupt our supply chain, or we're going to use AI to completely rebuild our forecasting of footfall in a retail environment or something. It's quite a complex thing, machine learning, data science. The big win right now is just get every single person that works in HR, that is a financial analyst, that is a marketer, that works in customer support. They have work that they have to do as a human being. And I sort of split this down into three buckets. There's work that you receive from other people. So someone gives you some requirements, a customer gives you a request for a proposal, someone gives you a quote or a contract. Maybe there's a new regulation or new compliance rules. There's something that someone else has given you. And as a human being, you have to understand that, analyze it, summarize it, work out what are the most important bits and the risks. So that's work that's given to you. You've then got the work that you actually do as a person. So, I need to research accounts. I need to prepare a proposal. I need to manage a direct report. Those are the things that you have to do yourself. And then there's work that you pass on to other people. So I need to create a proposal. I need to create some requirements. I need to create a summarization for my manager. I need to create an investor briefing, whatever that might be. And so these are very human things that you have to do. and how can you bolt on the skills with AI to be able to accelerate that. Much more capable at ingesting information and new requirements, much more effective at doing the job that I've got to do, and a much higher quality of output and speed of output that I'm delivering to other people. And in IT, you talk about the 10x developer or the 10x engineer. You know, what's the 10x HR admin? What's the 10x customer support representative? These people that are kind of bionically enhancing themselves with these tools are suddenly way more capable than the person that sat on the desk right next to them.
So I think that's a great vision. There are a lot of people, we're all COOs. We're like, yeah, okay, whatever vision. How do we do it? And dropping it down a level. I can explain some of the ways that I use Claude or ChatGPT. I've ended up buying Claude instead because of the ability to mimic your writing. I find that Claude creates my writing better than ChatGPT creates my writing out of the box, and that's why I subscribe to it. I use it for things when I have to be creative and I'm not being very creative. So I want an image for a presentation that evokes a certain feeling. And in the old world, I used to have an image and then I couldn't find it. And I talked to our designer and he has the entire Adobe back catalog and he gets me some photo and it's done. But now I can either describe an image and have it generated, or I can just say, I don't really know what image I want for exceeding our target this quarter. You know, like I can only come up with like some really generic ones. And I'll say, give me ideas of images that'll work. And he'll come up with loads of images. And I'm like, no, I don't like that one. I do like this one. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Edit it this way. And now and then Claude doesn't actually create images, but ChatGPT does, or DALL-E does. And so then I'll say, write a prompt for DALL-E that will give me the image. And then I'll put it in, create the image, and then edit between the two. And so, and all of that can be way faster than it used to take me to trawl through images to try and evoke the sensation that I want to evoke for customers. Or I need to write the weekly report or the weekly customer update. And there's bits of it that are written for me and bits that aren't. And I have writer's block and I'll just say, I want to talk, it's the end of the week. I've actually created a project for this. It's the end of the week. I need to make people feel this way. These are some topics that I'd like to talk about. Everything I'm writing is really stupid. Write me a paragraph that's not shit. Obviously, it's a better prompt than that, although sometimes that is the prompt. And it'll at least give me something. And I rarely cut and paste and use that itself, but it's a way of like, whenever I'm stuck with the too hard project that is me having to think, I turn to Claude to help me think. And oftentimes it just releases the writer's block in me to produce something. And that's not an efficiency thing. That's actually like a thinking thing. I mean, it is efficiency, but it's not like summarizing my emails.
I'll give you a specific example, which for a COO is a really sort of tangible way of using this. Anyone that's in a C-level role has got direct reports. Managing or leading those direct reports, probably when you became a leader, you had these great aspirations of how you wanted to be, you know, a great leader and a coach and advisor. And too often we get dragged down to just being a manager, a boss, and you're just going through the day-to-day exercise. Take a Claude project, or ChatGPT just launched projects just before Christmas. Create a project, one for each of your direct reports. So I create a project for Bethany Ayres, and in that project, I can now upload certain documents. Now, I would add in my regular one-to-one notes. I would add in maybe the performance review that came out of Workday last year. I might add in some OKRs that have been set. Maybe there was a DISC review assessment or something like that. And maybe just through my chats or my knowledge of working with you, Beth, I understand a little bit about your sort of personal career aspirations or maybe personal goals around, you know, houses or family or whatever that might be. And having done that, you can then start to ask this project about those kind of creative things. You know, I'm preparing for my one-to-one with Beth. Can you help me think through some stretch goals that would support what Beth's career aspirations are? I need to provide Beth with some challenging feedback around the way that she handled a recent project. Can you help role play with me how I could deliver that feedback to Beth, understanding DISC and the way that she is going to respond to that? Suddenly, you've got 10 individual leadership coaches for each of your direct reports. And, that's useful for managers, but it's about thinking about what's the work that someone is already doing. They have to do it. And how do we use AI to support me in being better at that specific role? It might be managing someone. You might have a project for a customer that you're selling or supporting into. It might be a project for a country that you're looking to open up. It might be a project, in my case, was for a product that I'm trying to build. So it's thinking about breaking down what are the bits of work that you're already doing and how do we give AI enough context around that to be able to give me what I want.
Can you give us one example on I need to ingest a wide swath of information, either summarize it or pull out some takeaways in terms of something that I'm trying to analyze or what have you?
I'm going to mention a tool called Notebook LM, which went pretty viral in the autumn of 2024. It comes from Google, so you can just go to notebooklm.google.com. And what they've done is take a very sort of intuitive approach to using AI. So you can upload a source, and a source could be a document, it could be a YouTube video, it could be a website. And what Notebook LM will do is ingest that source and use that and only that to drive a set of AI outputs and responses. So it's not accessing the wider internet. And a couple of things that it creates off the back of that document is a briefing document. It creates some FAQs. And the pièce de résistance, it creates a podcast interview between two AI-generated hosts. And an example that I'll provide maybe a little link to some of the sort of recording of this, but is the new EU AI Act, which starts to come into force in February 2025, so in just a month or so from now. Now, the EU AI Act is a 144-page document, very dry, as you'd expect, and difficult for most people that are not legal to quickly figure out, does this relate to me? How must I consider it? So what you're able to do in this example is upload that document, and then suddenly it generated for me a 31-minute podcast interview with these two hosts discussing it. But even better than that, you can join that podcast. So as you're listening to it, you can say, sorry, I don't understand that, or just help me to understand that. So suddenly you're having a conversation about this complex subject.
Right. So sorry, you can interrupt the podcast host and basically ask a question midstream. You're like, hey, podcast host, I have a question.
100%. And they go, hey, what's up? What's your question? And then you say, you talked about the EU AI Act coming in, but what's the first deadline that I have to be considering? And they go, well, February the 2nd, 2025. And so you're having this conversation. Now, this is about the EU AI Act, but think about all of the things that you have to consume. Maybe it's the MSA that's been sent to you from a supplier.
Can I give you an example of what we're looking to do? So it's interesting that you've mentioned it because my first experience with it was yesterday when one of our Gen AI people pulled together information on ideas of what we're going to do as a podcast. Not only does it do it as a podcast, but it can also clone your voice. So it's his voice doing the podcast. And what we're going to experiment is, do you remember years ago? I can't remember which company it was. It was a company that I worked with that would give all of their sales team CDs to listen to for sales enablement while they're on the road. It was either Microsoft or IBM. I don't remember. And so what we're going to experiment with is taking all of our sales enablement content and turning that into an internal podcast for our sales team so that while they're on the road, not that people are on the road as much as possible, can consume that content. And we're looking at a couple tools to basically create an internal playlist where you can find all the content as a podcast. But I didn't realize about the interactivity. So that's super cool.
So only just released maybe a week or so ago that they put the interactivity in. It's amazing. There's maybe a 2-second delay after your question while it reconfigures, but it's amazing.
So my one question is, Gemini, it was shit. Have heard that Gemini 2 is not shit. Have not played with it yet. We're going to experiment. Worth it or not?
So when I'm talking to clients, I talk about three things. I talk about Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude as being those sort of providers that people should be thinking about, and definitely one to be watching, especially if you're a Google Workspace customer, then that has to make sense. I'd just say on that, it's one of these things that is so different to SaaS. 5 years ago, if you're buying a CRM system or you're buying an ERP system, you go out to market, you pick which one, and you pick one. That is not the way that it works here. People are not going out to market to pick one LLM. You will have this composable architecture. You will have multiple, maybe some closed source, maybe some open source, and you'll use different ones, even within the same workflow. This is doing the research and this is doing the writing. And so from a COO perspective, from a CIO or CTO perspective, I think about Lego blocks. What you're building is a box of Lego that people can build what they want at the time. This isn't like a traditional procurement. So you would have Gemini plus the others in your box of Lego.
If our listeners can only take away one thing from today's conversation, what is it?
It is to plant the seed of AI use in every single one of your business teams. I say business to mean this is not an IT project. So for every one of your teams, how can you give them just one way of using publicly available tools, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, to improve one aspect of their work? Because it is those people that are closest to the business problem and the business process. And if you can show them one way of using this, that is where you will suddenly find all of these new ideas come from. So figure out how to get this groundswell going at the core of your business and bring that back up to the top rather than going top down.
Lovely. Thank you, Charlie Cowan, for joining us on the Operations Room. If you like what you hear, please subscribe or leave us a comment, and we will see you next week.